In this session, we're going to look at how to build a multiple choice quiz where there are a number of options, of which none of them would be incorrect. However, we might still want to be able to record what choices have been made or selected by the learner. In this example, we've got 4 buttons. They are representing 4 choices that could be made by the learner, and the questions: how long have you been smoking? The answers being the last 5 years, 5 to 15 years, 15 to 25 years, or over 25 years. And what we want to do is to have the learner select any one of those, make their choice, and be able to track what choice was made. This is what we're going to use SCORM interactions for. So we'll make a choice in this quiz. We'll select 15 to 25 years. This will take us through to a page where there's some feedback. And if we scroll down the page, we'll be able to see that there is an interaction. Now, if we've generated draft training and do an F5 to generate draft training, and then just Control and Enter, this will give us the scroll bar down the right hand side if you're running at 1024 by 768 on your screen resolution. So we've got the button, and if I click on the interactions button and then scroll down again, I'll be able to see the interaction that would get sent through either to Knowledge Point or to a SCORM LMS into what's called the CMI.suspend_data parameter of the SCORM LMS. And here you can see that I've selected button number 11, and the label in the button was 15 to 25 years. And you'll notice that the result here was correct, and that's just because I've set all the buttons to actually be correct. It's not ever so important whether we set them to be correct or incorrect in this particular scenario. It's just important that we make sure that the choices are sent through to your LMS. So we need to have a look at Content Point to see how that was created. So we're back in Content Point, and we're looking at the page where the questions were, and these are our 4 buttons you could see represented by the 4 cigarettes that there were on the page. Let's have a look at a few of the properties to see what choices that we need to set to get this to work. So the first thing we need to have is a label, and let me just scroll down, and here we can see that's our label for the choice that the learner has to make the last 5 years for that one. And in this second one, we've got 5 to 15 years. The image that I've selected, I've decided that the particular height and width is appropriate, and you can see here the height is 72 pixels, and a little bit further down we'll get to the width. Scrolling down a little bit further down the page, you'll see there's a label size, and that's the label that is the last 5 years in the first button options case. So we've selected label size 16 for each one of these buttons. The choice is entirely yours as to what layout of font and label size that you select. Scrolling down just a little bit further, we get to our SCORM interactions, and that's the send interaction parameters. Now, the choices here, we have to give our button a label. That's button number 1. The second one is button number 2. Button number 3, button number 4, and the number after the hash symbol, that indicates whether which button is correct. So in other words, I've said that button number 1 is correct, and if the learner clicks on this button, then this first button will be marked as correct. But what I've also done is I've said that button number 2 could equally be correct, and any one of these could result in a correct response going into our SCORM LMS. We could send a score as well if we wanted to. All you do is just change the send score parameter there. So target slide, they're all set to go to slide 302, and if I just expand my Training Explorer and have a look in here, you'll see slide 302 is the slide where the page after the choices are selected. That's where the learner goes to. The width of the buttons, I've selected 513 pixels just because that's the right size for my image. And the images I've selected for my buttons, I've got my image normal, which is my SIG 5A, and my image mouse over, which is my SIG 5B. Let's just have a quick look, and you can see this is the image that would show with my image normal. And if I mouse over my image, then the image changes to be like this. So that's the settings that are required, and once you've set your buttons up and it's particular interest in the send interaction parameters, that will send your information through to your SCORM LMS. One final point to note in slide 302, especially if you're not sending any scores, what you'll probably also want to do is to make sure that you have the send score or completion mark asset, and that would be send completion mark set to true, because if you've got no score and you're running your lesson in a SCORM learning management system, you need a way for that lesson to be marked as complete, and that's the way to do it. Just change the send completion mark to true on the last page of your lesson, and in my example here, this is the last page of my lesson. What is important, however, is the send completion mark asset is the first item on the page. If I come down to my element list here, you can see that I've just created it and it's actually the last item in the list because I only just added it to the page. I need to make sure that it's the first item in the page, particularly if I'm using a key element. And the reason I might use a key element is to act as an anchor to stop the page turning onto the next page if my text is set to appear within the timeline in a timed order. So I'm going to send my key asset down to the bottom and making sure that my send score or completion asset is up at the top. And that's how we set up a quiz with 4 choices, as you can see here, where any of those choices could be correct. One final additional item: although your information from all of your buttons, your interactions, will be recorded into the CMI suspend data, and of course when you publish you need to select use CMI suspend data to publish to your SCORM learning management system, the button down here, the course performance asset, could benefit your learners because they'll be able to see what choices they've made in your quiz. Let me show you how this works. So we have our quiz question. This could be one of a number of quiz questions, and we make our selection from 15 to 25 years is how long we've been smoking for, and we can have a look at our score down there. That label can be changed as well if you want to. And there's a course performance summary asset, and what this does is it will list all of the interactions, all of the clicks, all of the quiz answers from multiple choice quizzes that a learner makes, and they're able to print this off to a local printer if that's going to be useful to them, and they'll also be able to see all of the items that they have selected. Let's just quit from here and see how easy this is to add. So I'm just going to exit from my lesson, come back into Content Point, and here down at the bottom of the screen you'll see my course performance asset. Now I found that in the Atlantic Link library, so if I go to Help and go to the Asset Library here, and the third item down, Additional Assets, you'll find on the second row the course performance asset. Just click on the green arrow, just maximise that so that you can see it, little green arrow there to download this asset, and you'll be able to save it locally to your hard drive. Okay, so when you do have that locally on your hard drive, you'll be able to add this onto the first page of your lesson. I'm on slide number 1 here. It's the only place you need it. It's a global asset, a bit like a navigation button. It will appear to the learner on every page. And a variety of options you have to set. For instance, button label, you can change this from saying your score to be interaction report or just report or whatever you want it to say. And there's a whole selection of columns and items that could be shown or hidden from the learner should you choose to. Thank you for listening.